The morning felt normal until I reached Dad's house and saw the porch light glowing despite the bright sunlight. He never left small things undone, so the sight made my steps slow. Something felt off in a way my body understood even before my mind caught up. A red notice was taped across the front door, crooked and loud against the pale paint. It wasn't the kind of paper you mistake for mail or a neighborhood flyer. It had weight, authority, and a message that tightened the air before I even read it fully. I peeled it off carefully, almost hoping it would tear and I'll be forced to delay reality for another second. But it didn't. The words remained solid and cold. Final vacate notice. Property transfer complete. My pulse jumped as if I'd missed an entire chapter of Dad's life. Inside, the house felt too quiet. Dad sat at the dining table with his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that hadn't been touched. The steam was gone, replaced by a stillness that wasn't from the drink, but from him. He looked smaller somehow, like disappointment had softened his edges. He didn't even need to look up to know I had read the notice. "You saw it," he said, voice worn thin. Something in the way he said it told me this wasn't new for him. He'd already processed the first wave of shock before I arrived. I placed the paper on the table. "Dad, what is going on? This can't be real." My voice cracked slightly, more from confusion than fear. His eyes didn't meet mine right away, like he was preparing himself to say something he wished he didn't have to say. "Your brother sold the house," he finally said, the words landing with a heaviness that made the room feel smaller. For a moment, I simply stared at him, waiting for a correction or some twisted explanation. But he remained still, confirming the truth in his silence. It felt impossible. "Michael sold this house?" I asked, each word slower than the last. Dad nodded, and the slight movement felt like a crack spreading across a window. Nothing in our family history had prepared me for a sentence like that. I sat down slowly, feeling the seat press against me as if anchoring me in place. "Dad, you didn't put this place up for sale. How could he sell it?" He pushed a slim folder toward me with shaky hands, and the worry in his eyes already told me I wouldn't like what I'd find inside. When I opened the folder, the papers inside looked routine at first glance. Lines, signatures, dates. But then I saw it. A clause tucked neatly above Dad's signature, naming Michael Hale as authorized agent. My breath caught. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was printed in 8-point font. "Dad," I said slowly, "he made himself your agent without telling you?" Dad swallowed and looked down, shame pooling in the lines of his face. "He said it was to simplify things. I was tired and recovering. I trusted him." His voice trembled at the last word. "You didn't sign to sell your house," I said gently. "You signed because you trusted him." Dad nodded, eyes wet but steady. "The buyers came yesterday," he whispered. "That's when I learned I didn't own my home anymore." The pain behind the sentence was almost physical. I stood up, pacing as adrenaline hit. "We'll fix this. There has to be something we can reverse." Dad shook his head slowly, like he was carrying more years than his age. "I'm too tired for fights," he said. "I just want to understand why he did this." At the county office, the clerk confirmed everything in a detached tone, as if the words weren't breaking someone's life apart. "Transfer authorized by Michael Hale. Buyer, Clearbrook Investments." She slid the file back like it was a routine transaction. My jaw tightened. When I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A message from Michael lit the screen. "Stop making noise. Dad agreed to everything. Deal's done." The arrogance in those words made my hands tremble. He wasn't confused. He was confident. That was worse. Back home, Dad was trimming rose bushes with the wrong scissors, cutting deep into branches he'd nurtured for years. It wasn't gardening, it was distraction, a way to keep his hands busy so his mind wouldn't collapse under the weight of betrayal. "Dad," I said quietly, "we need to talk about what he did." He didn't look at me, he just exhaled slowly. "I keep trying to convince myself he meant well," he said, voice soft and breaking. "But every part of this feels wrong in a way I can't ignore." No one helps by selling a house for 1/3 of his value, I told him. He didn't act out of care. He acted out of need, his own. Dad's shoulders slumped as if the truth finally settled onto him instead of circling around him. It's hard to believe my son would do this, he whispered, admitted, eyes fixed on the roses he had just butchered unknowingly. I raised him better. His disappointment wasn't sharp or angry. It was slow, deep, and heavy, the kind that steals years from a person. You raised him well, I said softly, but trust can't control someone else's choices. Dad wiped a tear before it fell, pretending it was just sweat. I don't know what hurts more, losing the house or losing the son I thought I had. That night, after he went to bed, I opened the old metal file cabinet he kept perfectly organized for decades. Inside were years of neatly labeled folders, proof of a man who lived responsibly, honestly, and carefully. Every drawer smelled like paper, ink, and a lifetime of effort. Behind an insurance folder, I found the email that completed the puzzle. Funds wired to Michael Hale. Thank you for expediting the process. The timestamp matched the morning Dad was at a doctor's appointment. The truth formed with brutal clarity. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a misinterpretation. It was a choice, calculated, intentional, and selfish. Michael thought the deal was locked. He thought silence was his shield. But he didn't understand something important about my father. Quiet men don't seek revenge. Quiet men make decisions. And Michael was about to face one. Michael arrived the next morning with the same careless confidence he always wore, stepping into Dad's home like nothing had changed. His footsteps echoed through the quiet hallway, clashing against the tension in the air. Dad looked up slowly, exhaustion deepening the creases around his eyes as he watched his son enter. Michael noticed the document spread across the dining table and hesitated for only half a second before masking his expression with a smirk. "So," he said with a shrug, "you've been going through the paperwork." His tone suggested we were the ones doing something wrong, not him. Dad reached for the edge of the table to steady himself. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" he asked softly. There was no accusation in his voice, only pain. Pain Michael didn't seem capable of recognizing or respecting anymore. The room held its breath waiting for his answer. Marciale, he sighed dramatically, like this conversation was an inconvenience. "I helped you. You were stressed. I stepped in. End of story." His words were sharp but empty, crafted to defend himself rather than acknowledge what he had done. He spoke as if selling a family home was a minor favor. I pushed the printed email toward him, the one confirming money transferred directly to his account. The paper slid across the table until it stopped inches from his hand. He glanced at it briefly, then pushed it away with a fingertip, dismissing its significance entirely. "That's my consulting fee," Michael said, leaning back as if discussing a routine business deal. "I spent time arranging everything. I deserve compensation." His arrogance filled the room, squeezing out the remaining space for understanding or apology. Dad's eyes dimmed as the truth solidified. "You took money behind my back?" Dad whispered, disbelief catching in his throat. The fragility in his voice made something inside me tighten. This wasn't simply about a house anymore. This was about a father realizing the son he trusted valued dollars more than family. Michael's irritation sharpened. "You make everything dramatic," he said. "You wanted less responsibility. I gave you a solution. You should be thanking me, not interrogating me." His words felt like another betrayal layered over the first one. "You didn't give me a solution," Dad replied quietly. "You took away my home." His eyes glistened, but he steadied his voice. "You took something I built across a lifetime and traded it for a quick payout." The disappointment lingered between them, thick and undeniable. Michael rolled his eyes dismissively. "You weren't going to keep this place much longer anyway. I just made the decision for you. Someone had to." His words were sharp enough to cut, but emotionless enough to prove he understood nothing about what this house represented. "You don't get to make decisions for me," Dad said, voice stronger now. "Especially decisions I never agreed to."
He wasn't shouting. He was simply reclaiming the dignity Michael believed he could take away. It was the quiet strength that shook Michael more than anger ever could. "You signed the documents," Michael said, grasping at excuses. "That makes it official." He leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was offering a lesson. "That's how legal agreements work, Dad. It's done." His tone carried the smugness of someone who thought he had outsmarted the world. "You told me they were routine papers," Dad replied. "You knew exactly what you were doing." He looked away, his jaw tensing for the first time that morning. "Look, Michael," said standing abruptly, "I don't have time for this guilt trip nonsense. The deal is final. You have the money. Just move out before the deadline." His dismissal was cold enough to chill the air around him, confirming that he had no remorse for his actions. As Michael walked